Well, if you are a fix and flipper, this is the show for you. I have Viktor Jiracek on the call. Viktor has done, I think it's 20 fix and flips last year, and you're on track to do 30 more this year, 2021.
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So we got a lot of experience here, especially in Florida. But so we're going to try to do like a fix and flip 101 in 30 minutes. Let's see if we can pull that off, Viktor. I appreciate your time. But Viktor runs a great flipping resource group on Facebook. So look for Six Figure House Flipper on Facebook for a lot of resources and contacts. And I think there's a lot of discussion there. So I appreciate you hosting that group and offering that invite for everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on your show, by the way.
Yeah, anytime. So let's start things off. I think we all, you're 27 years old.
Yes.
How did you get into this fix and flipping and start this insanity?
Sure. So I went full time in real estate about 2.5 years ago. And before that, I was like kind of like a corporate job, like kind of 9 to 5. I was a home health administrator essentially. So like help run an office, and like if you're familiar with home health, like whenever someone gets discharged from the hospital, they still need time to recover. We'd send like a nurse or a physical therapist or a caregiver, importantly, just to help them recover. I just basically found out like, hey, this isn't for me. Like there's nothing wrong with the work itself. It just wasn't like, I wasn't really passionate about it. I was kind of neutral about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing was, it just wasn't getting me where I wanted to go financially. So like at the end of the month, I'd have like maybe an extra $500 or an extra $1,000 that I'd saved left over after all expenses and that sort of thing. I was like, I projected that forward. It's like, hey, this isn't going to get me where I want to go financially, and I deserve better. So just started to dabble in the real estate, and eventually got into wholesaling, then fix and flipping, and here I am.
Yeah. So you have had, you're doing that level of volume that has to have quite a few challenges. Like what was the biggest challenge you faced when scaling to that size?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, it's always about like two things, like the deals and the money. So if you can put those two things together, like the rest of it will fall into place. The rest of it's a lot easier to get set up. So if you can get the deals and get the money, then that's the two hardest things, and the rest just kind of comes together.
So where are you finding your deals right now?
Yeah, sure. So about half of my deals come from wholesalers, and then about half I source on my own. So we were talking, earlier, and I get some deals, once in a while from my website. I just have a little website, and people, fill out the form and they reach out, and just makes sense for us to work together. So I get some deals there, a little bit of cold calling, a little bit of everything, referrals. What's really cool, like once you get your first deal done and start to build more momentum, like doing more deals, like people start to know you, and it just becomes easier and easier to get a deal. Like for example, I put a deal under contract today, which is awesome. I'm excited about it. It just kind of happened. I didn't really do anything. It just, someone hit me up on, Facebook and Messenger, like, hey, I got a deal in Gainesville, which is where I'm at, and saw it, and like the numbers made sense, and decided to move forward. So like that momentum is always a surprise to me. But your first deal is definitely your hardest, but once you start doing more deals, just becomes more effortless, which is fun.
Sure. So what kind of marketing are you doing right now to find your off-market deals?
Mm-hmm. So what's really worked is like the cold calling. I know some people are pro, some people are against. It seems to work. And what I like about it, it's pretty immediate, so to speak. So like if I want to get leads today, I can start calling today, versus like direct mail. Like you gotta prep the material, then you gotta send it out, and you'll probably get calls next week. So I really like the directness of the cold calling. And that's really cool. It's also like relatively cheap. So it's not like I need to spend, $5,000 a month to get deals. Like you can do the calling yourself and spend like, $500 a month or less, getting deals that way. So I like that. It's also like very, like direct, and like not face to face, but very, like you're just talking to people. Like you're not hiding behind a postcard. Like you're not hiding behind a website. You're just talking to people. And I just really like that aspect of it as well.
So where are you getting your list? Are you pulling it from like List Source and then doing a skip trace?
Exactly. Yeah. List source is good. There's other ways to pull lists. Like there's a lot of free lists people don't necessarily know about. Like for my county, and this is, you'll have to look up for yourself locally, like tax delinquent, like people who are late on their property taxes, that's a free list. Like you can just get
Mhm.
that for free. So you can, skip trace that and, do all that good stuff. So don't knock the free stuff.
Yeah, I have to point out one thing that people seem to miss that I'm gonna push to is the white pages, just the old phone
Oh,
book,
interesting. Yeah.
because people who have landline phones still are likely that older group that would have equity in their house.
Interesting. Yeah. I haven't heard that before.
So, and that is probably one of the best free lists you can get. If you can grab one of those in your local grocery store.
Yeah. What I like about that strategy too, and this is what I recommend for folks getting started, like get started with the free stuff and then you can transition to the paid stuff. Just because like with the free stuff, when you're getting started, like maybe you're gonna say some stuff that you shouldn't have said, or you might not come across as confident, or you might not know what to say, or like there's gonna be a learning process and a learning curve as you're getting started. So that's why you want to start with the free stuff, because then it's like, oh, I didn't lose any money. I got free practice. But if you're paying, $100 per lead, $300 per lead, and you mess up, which does happen, even when you're an expert level. But when you're at that level, like you don't want to be paying that much. Like, oh shoot, I didn't get a deal, or I messed up, and now I'm paying for it, and I gotta go through more leads to get a deal. So like really focus on the free stuff and get as much value as you can out of it. And you can still get deals off of free stuff. I still do that for sure.
Yeah, no, great advice. So yeah, let's take a little time now, and if you don't mind, let's walk people through like how you run your numbers when it comes to flipping. Because to be honest, I think a lot of people find my show, they're newer to real estate investing. They might have seen an episode on the DIY network and they think they can flip a house on the weekend. And I really makes me nervous. I really want them to have a good understanding of like how to run these numbers and what is an actual good deal.
Mhm. Yeah. So what I typically stick to is what's called 70% rule. So 70% ARV minus repairs is your max offer. ARV being like after repaired value. Like, what do you think? What can you actually legitimately sell the place for? So I typically stick to 70% rule, with the market being where it's at. Because as of us talking today, like the market's hot,
Mhm.
to say the least. So I have a little wiggle room with that. So even if it's off maybe like a couple grand or maybe 5 grand, I still do the deal, just because I know like the property is going to sell and might even sell above asking. I know I don't have to factor in any holding costs, because I just know as soon as I list it, like it's going to be gone in the next couple of days. So that way you can be a little more flexible with 70% rule. But that's how I typically think about these deals, because when you're fixing and flipping, or when you're doing any sort of real estate transaction, there's a million variables you can be looking at. Like, what are the bedrooms, bathrooms? What's the neighborhood like what's the school system like? Is it close to a road? What are the neighbors like? And I mean, like, how much land does it come with? Like, you have so many variables to think through. Like, you just want to simplify it as much as possible. Like, okay, if the numbers make sense, it's a deal. And when you not run your numbers correctly, all of those variables are kind of baked into that as well.
So when you assess the ARV, let's define that a little bit. Are you going to like a popular website like Zillow or something like that? Redfin would be a great example.
Mhm.
Plot it out, find properties that are comparables, and do that kind of average. Have you gone that easily, or do you use some other tools
Yeah.
to
So
come up with those comparables?
for sure. Let's talk about that. So I first want to talk about what not to do, and then I talk about like what I do and a couple tips and tricks there. So I highly recommend against. So a lot of people use PropStream for ARV. Nothing against PropStream, but I just don't
Mhm.
feel like their ARV tool is that great. Like I recently, for example, I listed a property, this was last weekend. According to PropStream, it was worth 199. I listed for 240 and I got above asking to 256. So if I stuck with PropStream, like I would have missed out on quite a bit of money. So I would recommend against using PropStream for that reason. You can use it for other purposes, but just for the ARV, it's not quite there. Is what I've seen. and running deals.
Mm,
What I typically do, I just look on for free on deals with Zillow, and you can look up like what's sold in the area. You can get a nice neighborhood view, like how long it's, and then you figure it out from there. You look at comps, and I basically what's sold in the last 12 months that's similar to the property. And I found that just looking at like the higher end properties, like if it's kind of outdated and like in the middle tier, like I don't really look at those. I look at like what's the highest, like the nicest properties, because mine are typically nicer or on the nicer end. So
mm,
that's how I look at just Zillow's fine. If I need a second opinion, I've had success like asking a realtor for ARV. They're typically happy to help out. That's what they do all day. They just pull comps. I've actually also had success here with Fiverr. So you pay like $5-10, someone like pulls the MLS, pulls the comps, and you get like, I've gotten like really detailed comp reports, and it's like, 20-page comp report, like breaks everything down. I sometimes miss it, and they have MLS access and that sort of thing. And I've had a lot of success with that as well, just using Fiverr.
yeah, no, that's we use Zillow quite often, and that's actually the best way to do it. Just you can set it to sold and check the
Yeah.
neighborhood. Our CRM pulls in comps, but to be frank, I don't use it very often because we found that it's pretty off too.
Exactly. And that's really key. Like you're really playing with like two numbers. So it's like ARV, what you can sell it for, and then repairs, like what you need to put into it. Like those two numbers give you like what you can buy it for. So if you're off on ARV, like that's half the numbers like you're messing up with. So that's just really nailing it down is
Sure.
key. And even recently, it's kind of fuzzier with the ARV just because the market's so hot. Like sometimes we list properties like over ARV and we still get it. So it just kind of bends your mind there. But once things get back to normal, which it eventually has to, you want to be really honed in with that
Right.
number.
So you said, let me get this right. You start with the number 70% of ARV,
Yeah,
and then from there, do you start subtracting what you think the rehab is going to be?
pretty much. Yeah. So 70% ARV minus repairs is your max offer. So just a quick example, let's say ARV is 100,000. Let's say repairs are 10,000. So you do 100,000 times 0.7 minus 10. So your max offer is basically 60. So
Mm,
if someone offers you the place for 50, take it. That's a great deal. Someone offers you the place for like 80, for example, it's like those numbers don't make sense. So that's how I typically run it.
sure. So based on your experience, do you have like a quick rule of thumb or like that you can do uh, back of the napkin math to assess whether this is something to take a look at further? Like, do you have a number per square feet or a quick calculation to assess like what that first volley would be?
Yeah. So especially for renovations, I'm pretty contrarian. So a lot of people say like, oh, if it's a light rehab, it's 15 a square foot. If it's a medium rehab, it's 25 a square foot. It's a heavy rehab, 35 a square foot. I really don't like that sort of thinking. My mentality with fix and flipping is if it's not broke, don't fix it. So you're just trying to fix what's broken in the place. Like if the roof is 5 years old, like don't do a new roof, like keep the roof there.
Mm-hmm.
If the kitchen's like a little bit outdated but not perfect, like just keep the kitchen. Make your life simple. So I break down my rehab budget like at what needs to be fixed. So I say like, okay, painting is going to be this much, flooring is going to be this much, this is going to be this much, roof is going to be X. And that's how I break it down. I don't break it down by square foot. A little bit because that is influenced by like flooring prices and like painting prices because of like how much surface area or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I typically think of it. So I just break it down. I walk through a property, and what's really good is you do it more and more. Like you'll start to be more familiar with prices. So I can walk through a property now. And it took me some time to get here, and like within 90 seconds, I know I have like a number in my head. Like this place needs 50,000. This place needs 20,000. Then you can just plug and play from there.
Sure. So now that you've done this, do you kind of have a formula? Like I'm sure you have like a team that you kind of go to on a pretty regular basis that does a lot of this work. Do you have like a run book, if you will, that details like, well, Victor, we all of his property has this color walls, this flooring, this like what do you do to prepare or document what's going on at each step?
Yeah. So what's really good is as you start to do more volume, like pretty much just stick to the like same colors for everything. So it just makes it simple, especially as we have like leftover material. Like you can just use it on the next place because it's going to be the same color. So we typically do like a kind of like a light gray carpet and then like a light gray LVP, which is like a luxury vinyl plank. So it's kind of these like
Sure.
planks that stick together. So we do that, and then we do like a reflection gray by Sherwin-Williams. So it's kind of a light gray on the walls, and then white trim. So it's kind of that modern look, like just light gray colors. And that's what we typically do. And if there's anything left over, we'll just put it in the next place and keep it rolling.
Sure. No, that I've just found that time and time again that seems to be the case. Like,
Yeah.
so when you're managing these contractors then going, and I can't imagine you doing all this work yourself. You got a number of contractors. Do you have people helping you manage these projects as they're going on, or
For
how does
sure.
that
Yeah.
look?
Yeah, no, so I have a project manager now, which makes my life a ton easier. Just someone who can be there, check in on things, and make sure everything's going well. So that's pretty much it. So with me, with where I'm at, I have about, so again, the goal for this year is about 30 flips, and I'm on track for that, which is great. I have about 13 going right now. So for me to be running around and trying to knock those all out, that'd be pretty time intensive. So you have to start to build a team. Like if you want to hit like 6 figures flipping, it's totally fine to just be by yourself. That's 3-4 flips per year, totally doable. As you want to start to scale and do more, like you want to start to build that team.
Right. So how did you find your team members? Is that all about networking, or did you just
Yeah.
start calling the yellow pages?
I wish. Yeah, I wish. No, so how I did it, it's networking. So basically what I did, especially for the project manager role, I wrote a list like, okay, what are the characteristics of somebody to fill this role? So it's like reliable, like good character, like kind of tough love. Like sometimes if someone does something wrong, like they have to like push like, hey, you got to fix this type of thing. So I
Mhm.
basically wrote out all the characteristics of that. And then I started to reach out to people who had like similar characteristics in my network. And the idea is like attracts like. So if someone is like highly dependable, like their circle of influence, their circle is going to also have people who are highly dependable, because you're not going to have a highly dependable person kind of associate with someone who's like flaky and doesn't get the job done. So basically started to reach out to people in my network, and yeah, just got connected to like to another person, and just made it happen. So
Right.
it's been working out so far.
Yeah. So, um, with that, one of their we've seen some variables that have changed things, I'm sure, for you
Mm.
over the past year, with COVID and everything. But there seems to be a bit of some pricing issues when it comes to lumber and building material.
Yep.
How has that impacted your numbers and how you run things?
We pretty much do the same thing. Like even if prices have gone up a little bit, what I've seen is it typically just makes up for it on the appreciation. Like yes, we have to put a little more into the renovation, but by the time we sell the place, like we just sell it for a little bit more, and it just works out that way. So luckily we're in a good market and a highly appreciating market. It'd be a different story if our market was flat and like the costs were still rising. But now like so far from what I've seen, it just basically matches it. So for example, I bought a property here, and I bought in March, excuse me, and that was supposed to be like a quick 2-month deal. It's still taken some time with the renovations. It's a long story. But in that time, like the property is appreciated. It was originally like 315, now it's more like 325. And that offsets like the additional holding costs, and then it offsets the additional like renovation costs. So it just works out. So it's been luckily in our favor, that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the holding costs. How do people typically would they? You probably would recommend them calculating that. Sometimes that type of thing is missed.
Yeah. So I recommend like really make sure to include all of your costs. So that's like if you have like some sort of hard money or some sort of loan on it. So there's that like kind of mortgage, monthly mortgage, property insurance. That's a fee as well. Property taxes. You might have to only pay that per year, but even if you own it for 6 months, like it shows up somewhere. Like you have to pay it for the ownership. Utilities, that sort of thing. The other thing that people don't always look at is like the opportunity cost. So like the cost of your money being in one deal, in deal A versus deal B. So
Mhm.
sometimes I like to like move my deals quicker. So sometimes I won't like, for example, like there are like when I'm selling a property, like maybe I'll take an offer That's not quite where I want it to be, but I know they can close quick and I can, sell the place to them versus like having the property on the market for an extra month or two. And like waiting for that tip top price. Because I'd rather, be able to do, let's say, 10 flips and make 30K each than make, do 5 flips and make, what did I say? So I'd rather do, let's say 10 flips and make 30K each than 5 flips and make 40K each. So like
Mhm.
through the volume, like you're able to do more and you're able to make more. So you have to look at the opportunity cost of the money sitting there tied up in a deal.
Sure. So, now that you've been doing this for a while, if you had to do this all over again, what is one of those things that you would have done differently?
I think getting started earlier. I was recommended by a mentor like 5, 6 years ago to get started. It's like, hey, the real estate's great. You should get into it. I didn't listen, and I got started 2.5 years ago. And the reason that's an issue is just because of like exponential growth. So my first year I did 2 flips, then I did 8. Then last year I did 20. Goal this year's 30. So who knows where I would have been if I got started, 5, 6 years ago. Might have been at like the
Sure.
40 or 50 mark. So that's what a lot of people miss is like your growth isn't linear necessarily. Like there is that exponential. Like once you get it, you can start doing more and more and scaling. So you miss out not just on like the linear growth. So just getting started ASAP is really key. Even if it's taking like little actions or like attending a local RIA, things, little steps every day can really push you in the right direction.
Sure. Well, and then I like this other question too, is the concept. If you could speak to yourself, 20 years from now, what would you tell your future self?
What would I tell the future self?
Yeah.
I thought about this. I think about this constantly. Like I'd rather have like there's two buckets. Like I'd rather have 20% growth for 50 years than 90% growth for a decade. And like if you look at that, just continuing that exponential conversation, if you the 20% growth over 50 years like is way, way, way more than the other bucket. Like even like doubling, like if someone doubled their business every year for a decade, they'd be a great entrepreneur.
Right.
But people often overlook like the slower growth. So in talking to the future self, it's really key, like just making sure like you're still on track. Because sometimes it's like the boring, consistent, mundane stuff that really, can compound and become something, a behemoth in like 30 years. So
Yeah.
that's what I would tell my future self.
Yeah. No, there's something to be said about that slow and steady. I mean, there, that old adage really rings true.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, it's
Usually
so
that
true.
means slow and stable.
Slow and stable, yeah, because that's the other thing, like when things happen, like for example, for April 2020, like March 2020, like let's say March to May 2020, like things really slowed down.
Mhm.
Like if you were running things on fumes where you were kind of tight financially and tight with your deals, like you could have been knocked out of the game. And especially when you're thinking long term, like you just got to be in the game. Like even if you're like staying in the game and just growing a little bit, like you're still in the game. You don't want to be knocked out and then like that's it. It's got to start
Right.
from zero or start from negative even.
So, and I'm going to change shifts a little bit on you. But before I do, I want to remind everybody your Facebook group again, Six Figure House Flipper.
Yes.
Join Victor's group there for a lot more information and details.
Mhm.
But a lot of people, when they get into this, they jump in head first. They're all starry eyed. They're excited about this opportunity. But I need you to share your worst deal.
Worst deal. Okay. Huh. Well, luckily I've never like lost money on a deal, which is good. Probably worst deal. I have a couple like bad ones for sure, but I'll share one of them here. There was a mobile home. This was probably about a year ago. Again, like deals were slower just because of inventory being low. So there's a mobile home. It's about an hour out. It's in Bronson, so it's like an hour out west of here, Bronson, Florida. And basically bought this with a partner, and like it was me and a partner, so we are going to go in on it. First thing that went wrong, like the first contractor, like he gave us a quote for 35. He saw the place, walked the place. He said, okay, I can do all the work for 35,000. Great. The tenants moved out, or like the owners moved out as they should have per our like agreement. And then so they moved out, and that was no problem. The guy walked the place again. No, first before that, we gave him a deposit. We gave him a deposit like it was like 15 grand or 20 grand. So like we gave him a little bit above 50%. And the next day he's like, "Oh, it's not going to be 35 grand. It's going to be 50 grand for the renovation. I just walked the place again. I missed some stuff, and it's going to be 50 grand now." So obviously he just took the deposit, and we're like, "Oh shoot, this isn't good." Basically got the deposit back from like, "Hey, you can't like double your price. You already saw the place. Like you can't just double your price all of a sudden." What we think happened, maybe you got some other more profitable work. So we just need to X this one. Okay, great. So got the money back. Okay. Got in a second contractor. He's like, okay, got all the stuff done. I think it lasted for about a month where like nothing was happening. Like they did demo, and then it was just promise after promise after promise, and like made zero progress. I don't think we didn't really pay him much. So it wasn't that big of a loss. It kind of compensated with what needed to be done. So that was the second contractor. The third contractor was able to get in there. He was really busy. So he had other projects. So like the quality, and there's a couple things like missed that were there. But other than that, like did a great job, got it. We listed it. Awesome. Listed it, got it, full asking price within a couple days. Cool. That's not bad. About to close, it took like 30 days, 45 days. An FHA loan is a mobile home. If you know about mobile homes, if the mobile home is original to the land, then you can get it financed. If it's been moved, it's like put somewhere and then it was moved, it's called second set. You can't get financing for it. It has to be cash. We found that out a week before. Nobody told us it was not original. And we found that out a week before closing. Nobody thought to check it. So that one fell through. We relisted it, eventually found a cash buyer and sold it to them. No problem. And we made about 11,000 on that one, 11,500. It was just a lot of hassle. Like, yes, we made a profit, and that's awesome. It's just a lot of hassle, a lot of heartache, a lot of stress that I don't have to go through again on that
right.
one. That's probably one of the worst deals here.
Well, let's leave on a high note. Tell us about your best deal.
So there was a deal also in Florida here. Obviously, that's where I'm doing all my deals. We bought it for, I think we bought it for like 74 or 78. 78. We bought it for 78. We put in about 50 and we sold for 200. So we made about 64K net. That was great. Renovation went pretty smoothly. Selling went pretty smoothly, but it's our best deal to date. And 64K was really good. So really excited about that. That one went like mostly smoothly, and maybe a couple of hiccups, but nothing to report. So yeah, that was a good one.
Sure. Yeah, that does sound good. So, I warned you when we started that I always like to start closing out the show with one actionable thing that you can give people that they can do right now to make an immediate difference in their business. What would you suggest?
I recommend, especially for beginners, I recommend, this is what I teach, like for your first offer, do what I call like a lowball offer. A lot of people get into like analysis paralysis, or they get into like, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? And they just kind of sit on the sidelines for a long time, and months become years, become, decades. So, just kind of drags on for a long time. So I'd recommend like this weekend, you can even do this today, like make a 50% lowball offer. So go on like a for sale by owner site, call up an owner, and if they're asking for 100, offer 50,000. And through this exercise, you realize like people are typically nice. Like you're not going to get yelled at. They're not going to come and beat you up. They're just going to say, hey, that's too low. I'm so sorry. That's not going to work for me. And that'll be that. And then you'll realize, oh, my worst fears aren't even that bad. So I might as well just, make this happen. So I shouldn't have this fear holding me back anymore.
Yeah. And there's kind of a trick to that too. If you really get in the habit of it, I've always found that you can almost say anything if you ask permission first.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's true too. That's true. Yeah.
So if you say, I hate to tell you this, but would it be okay if I share? Mm-hmm. They'll say, yeah, go ahead. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And then it's not going to be as big of a hit when you do throw that out.
I've used the phrase, or I've heard people use the phrase like, I want, like, what do you think you want to get for this place? Like, I don't want to insult you with my own offer. They're like, oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead with your offer. And then you've primed it in a way, like they can't be insulted after you just said, Don't be
Right.
insane.
Right. So in a roundabout way, just ask permission, and
Yes,
99% of the time they're going to give it to you.
exactly.
So
And for the 0.1% of the time, it's typically like some other issues they have in their life. If they're yelling at a stranger, like, I mean, that's that's on them. That's not on you.
right. Yeah. I mean, we talked early on, we talked about sending out mailings, and I just had another one just the other day called in, and there was nothing I was going to do or say to get her to not yell at me,
Mhm.
because she simply had gotten a postcard in the mail.
Yeah,
So
you got a little piece of paper in the mail and that makes you angry. So that's, what can you do about that? People get mail all the time. So I don't know why
yeah,
she.
exactly. And it didn't help when I asked her, well, do you call Walmart and yell at them too? No. Anyway, so lastly, is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Is there a question you wished you would have asked me? That's a good one. I've asked people that question before as well, and that's a good one.
And if you don't have an answer to that, I've just done such an
Oh,
outstanding job that I just exhausted every possibility.
yeah. I'm trying to think of one. I was like the first thing that came to mind is like who makes it and who doesn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this over and over again. It's like it's not. I've seen people with like no credit, no money, know nothing about real estate. Like I've seen them be successful time and time again. And then
Mm-hmm.
people with money and credit and like at every possible advantage, like they get nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of things behind that. I think just to build on that slow and steady theme, like I liken it to the gym. So I'd rather you go to the gym. Like a lot of people go to the gym and they're like, oh, I want to make this happen. So they go every day for a week and you don't really see a lot of results after that. You just kind of get sore and it doesn't really go anywhere. I'd much rather you go 3 times a week, which is obviously less, but go for a whole year. And I think I would say a lot of people aren't used to like consistency or aren't used to like self discipline when it comes to this sort of thing. So I've had a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I'm going to make 50 offers this week and this weekend, and I'm going to get a deal." And like
Mm-hmm.
those people just kind of hype themselves up, where it's like, Friday rolls around, like, "Oh, I didn't make any offers." Saturday rolls around, "Oh, I didn't make any offers." And Sunday rolls around, like, "Oh, I can't do 50 offers in a day. That's too crazy. I'll pick it up next weekend." And that sort of pattern continues until they basically give up. So I'd rather you, like, even with the gym example, like go one time a week, but then it becomes a habit, it becomes part of you, and then like twice a week, 3 times a week becomes a lot easier. I just think
Mm-hmm.
we're wired differently as people, where like we're not used to that, and we're not used to that type of thinking. Where like even if you do a little bit consistently, like you're going to outperform someone who doesn't. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a thought here, just kind of a question. I don't know if that was a question. It was just more of a monologue.
No, it makes a lot of sense too. And more people than not, they have a tendency of reacting to pain versus,
Wow.
pleasure or contentment.
Mhm.
So typically, I'm going to pile on your analogy there. Those people that have a little bit more, they find that consistency quicker, and they perform well in real estate investing.
Yeah.
They may not have, they may have a, they might be struggling with a little pain right now. There's something behind that driving their motivation. And
Hmm.
those of us that you get into this point of contentment,
Yeah.
there isn't a driving reason to break free of that.
Yeah. And then that's the unfortunate thing. Like, I did a survey here recently of people who wanted to get into real estate. And out of like 137 people, like I kept in touch with them, I think like 6 months, 12 months. Like, what would you guess out of 137, how many of those like beginners going 0 to 1, how many actually completed their first deal? What do you think?
20% of them.
Oh, I wish. No, it was like 3 or 4%. So like
Really?
extremely small number actually went out and did it. And there's a lot to untangle there. I don't think we have time for that, but I think it's like the biggest thing is that fear, and it's like it's that they don't realize it's fear that's holding them back. Like they think it's like some sort of excuse, like, oh, if I had the money, or if I had X, if I had Z, Y, Z, then I could do it. But then they don't realize, like, once they get that, like let's say I gave you all the money in the world. Like, okay, now you got to get deals. Like now you don't know how to get deals. Now what?
Mhm.
And then like, let's say I teach you how to get all the deals. And it's like, I'm scared of doing a deal because I'm scared of like, what if I lose money? So then it's like, okay, then you just, so people don't really realize what's holding them back. So that 3%, that, yeah, that surprised me as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I hope everybody takes some action right now
Yes.
and head over to Six Figure House Flipper
Mhm.
and join your group, because it sounds like there's a lot of benefit there and a supportive group. So I really appreciate your time again, Victor. And you're welcome back anytime. We
I appreciate
probably
it.
could spend a whole episode on mindset.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. That's a whole topic for another time, but I appreciate it. This has been good. This has been fun, and hopefully shared a lot of good tidbits for your audience here.
Oh, you definitely have. So again, Six Figure House Flipper, and we'll talk to you again next time.